everyone, Trudy here with Heal Wellness and Therapy. Today I want to discuss my top 3 tips for shoulder impingement. So, sometimes we get shoulder pain. We hear this word shoulder impingement either from our physical therapist or our doctors. Maybe the terminology that our doctor or physical therapist says to us is that we've got a biceps tendonitis, or we've got a rotator cuff tendonitis, or we've got a bursitis. So there's lots of various diagnosis names that are given to the shoulder when we don't have enough space in our shoulder joint. Bottom line, the general term that is often used is shoulder impingement. So if we think about our shoulder joint like a ball and a socket, where the socket is really, really shallow, the ball is nice and round, but there's a hood. There's a top to where that ball is. That's where the problem happens. That top to our shoulder ball and socket is known as your acromion, which is the very top of your shoulder where you feel bone. Oftentimes, when we do a lot of things with our arms forward, think on a computer, driving, reading, being on some sort of smartphone, tablet, whatever, or if we do a lot of repetitive things overhead, we can lessen that space between where the ball and that hood or that top of that socket is and compress tissues. So the main 3 tissues that get compressed and very aggravated are your biceps tendon. So you'll feel pain in the front of your shoulder. Your supraspinatus tendon, which is one of your rotator cuff muscles, you'll tend to feel pain on the outside of your shoulder, and your bursa, a fluid-filled sac, whose intention is to actually protect those tendons from getting irritated. It too can get inflamed, and that will cause us pain in our shoulder, specifically if we do any reaching overhead or behind our body. So here are my top 3 tips for shoulder impingement. 1, get nutrition to the shoulder joint, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. 2, get the shoulder back on axis. So oftentimes when we do so much forward or we do so much overhead, the ball actually translates forward. And so there's less space in the front. We get more pinching, kind of thinking like, pinching your tongue between your teeth, and that's what creates our pain. So we got to get that shoulder back on axis, or so that it's perfectly set in that ball. And then the third thing we need to do is strengthen some of the muscles that tend to get underutilized and weakened. All right, so let's go through those 3 things right now, beginning with nutrition. So nutrition means that we have to move our shoulder. The last thing we want to do if we've got shoulder pain is to stop using it. Disuse will cause more issues with our joint than it will help us. What you don't want to do, however, is continue repetitively lifting overhead or behind your body. So the rule of thumb is use your arm in front of your body at or below your shoulder height. Now, the best way to get nutrition to your shoulder joint is through a technique called gapping, G-A-P-P-I-N-G. Nice and simple. If you think about the ball, you think about the socket, all you're doing is creating a movement, an oscillation, where the ball is being pulled in and out from the socket. What that does is it moves fluid. When fluid is moved, we get nutrition, which causes healing. So here is how to do gapping to your shoulder. I'm going to demonstrate everything with my right shoulder. Obviously, you could do it with your left shoulder. If that is your shoulder, that is your problem side. So just a simple hand towel rolled up, place it underneath your armpit. Once you have it there, you now have a fulcrum to move the ball of your socket over. Then take your opposite hand, reach up and over and grab the outside of that arm. Now, in that position, if you just pull your elbow into your side, you're creating that fulcruming or that gapping of the joint. Now, if you've got a really angry tendon here, this could be a little tender. So maybe rather than doing a big, gigantic movement, you just do a small little oscillation of the elbow inward. Oftentimes with my patients, I'll get them to do what's called a contraction and a relaxation. So if you hold the outside of the elbow and you try to push your elbow outward into your hand, you actually contract your deltoid as well as some other muscles in your shoulders. Then as you relax that, you can pull the elbow in and create more of a gap with a little bit less pain. So a good rule of thumb, a good dosing if you want to call it, is to create that contraction, push the elbow out, and as you relax, pull it in 3 to 5 times, a few times a day to get some nice, beautiful nutrition into that joint. All right, so tip number 2 is all about getting the shoulder joint back on axis or finding alignment of the shoulder joint. The key part of our shoulder that gets the most tight with impingement is the back or the posterior capsule. So to stretch out that posterior capsule, I'm actually going to show you 3 ways because I think it is that important of a stretch for your shoulder. So the first one's nice and easy. Again, pretending that our problematic shoulder is our right shoulder. Take your right hand, bring it up and over your left shoulder. Take your left hand underneath your right elbow. Now in this position, weight your arm down and into your left hand. Relax the right shoulder completely. Then allow yourself to slowly pull the elbow gently across the body. Now, if you begin to pull your elbow across the body, and rather than getting a motion across your body, you see that your shoulder just elevates towards your ear. 1, that tells you that you're tight, but 2, you have to actively depress the shoulder. You have to actively pull the shoulder down as you're pulling the shoulder across. So you really want to make sure that you don't let your shoulder elevate any. It will actually cause the pain that you're feeling in the first place. So a good rule of thumb here is once you have that stretch of that posterior shoulder, you might feel a little bit of a pull in the back of your shoulder joint. Just hold here and take 3 to 5 nice, slow, deep inhales and exhales, always making sure you're trying to depress that shoulder downward. So that's exercise number 1 that you can do to create space in the back of the shoulder and get the shoulder on axis. The second way, and my favorite way to do it, is a yoga pose. And the yoga pose is called thread the needle. So if you are in a hands and knees position, again, pretending that the right shoulder is the impinged shoulder, taking the arm out to the side and sweeping the arm underneath. That's the threading of the needle, by the way. Drop your shoulder down so that your shoulder is resting where your right wrist just was. Then in that position, allow yourself to slide the left arm up. Really open the space between your right ear and your right shoulder. Then in that position, take a deep inhale, and as you exhale, pull your left armpit towards your right elbow. Beautiful stretch in that backside of that right shoulder here. Just like the first stretch, holding that stretch, 3 to 5 slow, deep inhales and exhales will be sufficient to stretch out that posterior capsule. Now, for those individuals that maybe have some biceps tendonitis, or maybe you've got just a completely inflamed shoulder that it is impinged, doing a lot of movement across the body just feels really uncomfortable because the shoulder's already got too much fluid and inflammation in there. That's where something called the sleeper stretch comes in handy. So it is a way to stretch the back of your shoulder without having to bring the arm across the body. So it is often done in side lies. So if you can imagine just taking yourself down on the affected side, I'm going to use my bolster as my fake pillow here. Then in this position, making sure that you've got some nice good alignment of the shoulders. So never letting the top shoulder be rolled forward. Having the bottom shoulder so that the shoulder and the arm are both in alignment with one another. Simply bending the right elbow, if it is the affected side, turning the palm downward towards the knees. Then, in this position, taking the opposite hand and resting it on top of the forearm of the right shoulder. Now, in this position, not letting yourself rolling back, not letting yourself rolling forward, and again, making sure that there's lots of space between the ear and the shoulder. Simply and gently allow the hand to come downward towards the knees. Make sure the elbow doesn't fall downward. In this position, holding that gentle stretch, you'll feel that rotation, but it is also creating length and space to the back of that posterior capsule. Sustain this stretch, hold it here, 3 to 5 slow, deep breaths. And this just might be the perfect way for you to get that shoulder back on axis or in alignment. Now that you've created nutrition, step number 1, created an alignment correction of your shoulder. Step number 2, the final one, is to create some strength to the muscles that may be weakened. Now, the biceps or the supraspinatus, the rotator cuff muscle that is most often impinged, probably isn't the place to begin with your strengthening because they're inflamed and they're painful. Where you can begin with your strengthening is the back half of the rotator cuff. 2 specific muscles called the infraspinatus and teres minor. You do not need to know those. Just think muscles that are back there that'll help you align and strengthen your shoulder again. So that same hand towel that you had in your armpit, place it down at your elbow. Take some sort of resistant bands. It doesn't matter what type of resistance band you're using. Just make sure it's not too heavy. Then in this position, holding the resistance band with the unaffected arm, or you can put it in a doorway if you like, having your arm running perpendicular to your body on the affected side. I like to turn palm up. It just creates a little bit of a biceps engagement there. In this position, sitting up nice and tall, standing up nice and tall, whichever you prefer. Gently squeeze the elbow just slightly into the side of the body to make sure it does not move. Then, to get that teres minor and that infraspinatus muscle strengthened, help the alignment of that shoulder that's painful, simply rotate the arm outward, hold it for a second or two, and then gently rotate it back inward. Now, this is an easy exercise to do. If your shoulder is so painful that moving the arm inward and outward itself is causing pain, then maybe for you, you begin the exercise isometrically, meaning you place the arm out and then you add the resistance and you just hold it there. So there's not a lot of motion to the shoulder while you're strengthening. Now, how many of these do you do? It's not a matter of sets and repetitions. It's a matter of getting to the point that you feel that beautiful burn in your shoulder. So I tell people when I am working with them, do it until the shoulder burns. And make sure you understand that burning is very different than pain. So there you have it, my top 3 tips for shoulder impingement. Number 1, nutrition. Number 2, get the shoulder in alignment. Number 3, strengthen the shoulder to keep it in alignment. Thanks for joining me, and please subscribe to our channel so that you'll get notifications for all of the new videos that we send out. Have a great day.